So this is the conclusion of the video lecture for Wednesday, April 8th. And we're talking about Radu and Radu's description of Genshed's power, how he understands the power of Genshed. And I'm reading from page 474 in chapter 50, the beginning of chapter 50, where we first really meet Radu. We're talking about the character arc of Genshed. We've talked about Malithus's character arc, Keldric's character arc. We're talking about those character arcs in terms of redemption, how Adams is defining redemption and defining evil. And now we're talking about Genshed, and this is what Radu says. Evil has made Genshed strong. You don't feel it yet, but you will. He's been granted the power to make others evil, to make them believe in the strength of evil, to inspire them to become as evil as himself. What he offers is the joy of evil, not just money or safety or anything that you and I could understand. And then Radu goes down and talks about Shouter, and that Shouter admires Genshed and wants to give Genshed everything he's got. Shouter isn't thinking about rewards. Shouter wants to spend his life beating and hurting and terrifying. He knows he's not much good at it yet, but he hopes to improve. In other words, what Shouter's admiring is Genshed's power. And what Shouter wants is to become powerful like that. And what is Genshed's means to power? It's beating and hurting and terrifying. It's control. It's having strength, having mastery over the others, being absolute and able to dictate, to confine them, to imprison them, to dictate their actions, and to control their wills, to make them will with him. Radu goes ahead. Now, this is really important. I'm going to quickly wrap this lecture up, but it is the character arc of Radu is very, very important for you to follow, and you need to look at what's different between Radu and Keldric. Okay, what's different between them? And does Radu need redemption? Is Radu's character arc an arc of redemption? And as you look at Radu's character arc, so I'm going to give you a clue here, a spoiler alert. But as you look at Radu's character arc, think about who is Radu one with. And remember, this is not an allegory, but perhaps like in Shardik we're seeing certain facets of Jesus Christ's nature as being fully man and fully God, and one with God, the Son being one with God the Father. And that's the clue right there. Okay, are you listening? Will you watch? Will you listen for this as you finish the story, the assigned chapters for today? Okay, so who is Radu with? Radu also represents certain aspects of Jesus Christ. The Son. The Son's, what is the nature of Jesus the Son's relationship with God the Father? And is Adams, or how is Adams using Radu's relationship with his father, Elaroth, to portray this oneness between the Son and the Father? And furthermore, how does that enable Radu to resist evil? Okay, let's keep going here. So Radu tells Keldric that Genshed wants him to become an overseer, and and Keldric says, well, if you became an overseer, mightn't it give you a chance to escape? And this is Radu's response. Perhaps from anyone but Genshed. Well, didn't he try to talk you into becoming an overseer? Didn't he threaten you? And this is Radu's response. Genshed would never threaten a boy to make him become an overseer. A boy who's going to become an overseer has got to want to do it. He's got to admire Genshed of his own accord, his own will, and want to live up to him. And notice that word accord and its relationship between two wills being one. Of course, Genshed wants the ransom money for me, but if he could persuade me to become an overseer, that would mean even more to him. He wants to feel like he's had a hand in making a nobleman's son as evil as himself. So that is, and then he ends by saying, cruelty and evil, the end of chapter 50. Cruelty and evil, they're not very far down in anyone. It's only a matter of digging them up, you know. So what is Radu's great fear? His fear is that Genshed will win, that he'll succumb to Genshed's power, that he'll get to the point where he's so hungry, he's starving, he's so weak physically, he's enduring so much pain that he gives up. And where does the giving up, where would it occur? Radu understands it'll occur in his will. And he'll submit to Genshed and give Genshed his will. And he's afraid of that. And he's saying, hey, this ability, this surrendering to evil is possible for any human being if we'll put in the right circumstances. When evil is using pain and hunger and despair and terror to control us, to take control, not just of our actions, right, but of our minds and our wills. Okay, and finally then, let's look at the character arc of Genshed. Just a couple passages I want to call your attention to where you see this oneness that Genshed wants. He wants with Radu. This is the process of conversion, and Genshed wants to convert Radu to evil. And in this, I'll just read this one passage from two passages. The first one is from the end of chapter 51, which was assigned from Monday. And this is at the very end of chapter 51, page 490 in the book. And Keldrick, they've made this trek across this barren, godforsaken land of Zaray. No food. The food's run out. Everyone's hungry. They're just starving now. They're ready to eat insects to stay alive. And they reach the Gap of Linsho, where Genshed is planning to leave, to escape from Zaray and cross into another country. So he's no longer, he can no longer be arrested by the Becklins or the Yeldashay rebels in the area. And when they get to this Gap of Linsho, voila, Elaroth's men, the rebel army from Yeldashay is already there, and they've closed the gap and they're guarding it. So now Genshed is locked, imprisoned in Zaray, in this godforsaken land. And how is he going to get out now? He's surrounded. And it's interesting because it's Elaroth's men. And so Radu sees the flag, his father's coat of arms flying on the flag. But what can Radu do? I mean, if the kids just started yelling, Genshed couldn't kill them all. Those soldiers would have come running. But so complete is Genshed's domination of these children, including Radu, including Keldrick. Radu just falls to his knees and just kind of hoarsely, Sarkid. But When Genshed commands them to turn around and go back, they do it. None of them resist, even with, if you will, salvation in the form of those soldiers, even with it right there, not 50 feet away from them. His domination, and this is Keldric thinking. This is what Keldric is understanding. So understand this in terms of Keldric's character arc and his movement towards redemption. His domination, that evil force of which Radu has spoken, lay all about them, Keldric and the children, like a frost, unassailable, visible only in its effects. So this is something beneath the surface of things, visible only in its effects, permeating their spirits with its silent power to numb and subdue. It lay within them, in their starved bodies, in their hearts, in their frozen minds. Their minds are frozen. They're not able to think. The mind has to be shut down, so no one's thinking now. It's just about life and death, about getting the next something in the stomach, the next bite to eat, not staying alive, but surviving, as Malithus said, surviving. Not God himself could melt this cold or undo the least part of Genshad's will. The hearts of stone, they're cold. And nothing, not even God, as far as Keldric can see, not even God has the power to melt their hard hearts. Keldric, waiting until Bled was looking elsewhere and would not see his slow, fumbling struggle, lifted Shara once more in his arms, took the unresisting Radu by the hand, and followed the slave dealer back into the forest. All they had to do was start yelling, and Genshed, Genshed would have killed somebody for sure, but that would have been the end of Genshed. And then finally, we'll move on to chapter 54, the last chapter, which was it was assigned for today. So you're going to read this. So I'm going to just give you a little bit of sampling of what's ahead. It's very important that you finish chapter 54 for today, and that you add these notes. So chapter 54 on class notes 12B, that plot diagram. Chapter 54 is the climax is going to be at the top. So that's where your notes for today should end, there with the climax. What is the climax? And fill in the following action along that slope on class notes 12B for the plot. Okay, that's all you need to submit for today's notes, the action through the climax, but you must identify the climax in chapter 54. And here, this is after the climax of themselves. So Genshed is marching them on. He has a plan for escape. He knows how he's going to get out alive. And of themselves, the children could not have walked 100 paces, could not have sat upright on a bench, or stripped themselves of their verminous rags. Lame, sick, famished, barely conscious of their surroundings, they're brain dead. The mind's not thinking anymore. The will is completely subject to the agony, the pain of the body, the empty stomachs. It was that they knew well enough that they were in the hands of Genshed. He it was who had the power to make the lame walk, the sick rise up, and the hungry to overcome their faintness. They had not chosen Genshed, but Genshed had chosen them. Without Genshed, they could do nothing, but now he abode in them, and they in him. He had overcome the world so that life had become a simple matter without distraction of moving by his will to the end which he had appointed. The will of Genshed, animating to the extent necessary to its purpose. Animate means to give life to, literally, that's the definition. So giving life to the extent necessary to its purpose, excluded hope and fear of anything but itself, together with all import from other sights and sounds. It was not for them to know the times or the seasons which Genshed had put in his own power. It was enough for them to do his will. So here we have this stark contrast, right? Adam's quoting scripture that applies to Jesus Christ and applying it to Genshed. Again, what is his point? What is his point? What's just happened? That the will of Genshed has replaced the will of God. And why is it Genshed who's making the lame walk? And how has he achieved that? And we'll pick up the answers to those questions in our last lecture for our last classes next week. God bless you all. May you enter this Easter season with in the reality of his presence and his power to do good, to give new life, to bring life where life has ceased to be. Okay? God bless.